Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
At the SHRM 2019 annual conference in Las Vegas, I attended a session on HR transformation led by Employee Experience. Using a case study on an HR transformation project for a Brazilian company that experienced its HR function to evolve from service providers to experiences designers, the presenters covered the journey that begins with organizational purpose and the employee value proposition through company leadership's role in identifying areas for improvement using data, how to engage your workforce by promoting a human-centered culture, and transformation through agile and design thinking. Now, we've covered all these topics throughout the 5 years that we've had the Workology podcast, but I wanted to specifically talk about design thinking in a different way. We've had a previous conversation with Dorothy Mankey. So we're talking about how design thinking can be applied in this example. Today, I'm joined by the session presenter, Oliver Kamakura. Oliver, welcome to the Workology podcast.
Thank you, Jess.
So I really enjoyed your presentation at SHRM, and I told you before we started the podcast that I have sort of been a student of design thinking. I'm really interested in the framework and how it's being applied. But before we get to the case study, can you talk a little bit about what led you to HR transformation roles, specifically with a focus on design thinking?
Yes, I've been a consultant to people affairs for over 16 years already. I would say the most relevant frustration I had in my consultation project was for the perception that the HR function in general not really anchored in concrete evidence to propose intervention to the people in general. So what led me to a transformation project was this, sort of frustration that the HR function should be way more strategic, way more grounded in data, and way more grounded in science to effectively start proposing better and make the interventions more tangible to other states. So I think that was the first step. That frustration that we as HR professional were lacking from being more scientific and intentional in our proposals to organizations.
Awesome. Well, at a basic level, can you speak to how you feel like HR, the why behind why they should be the strategic player in leading a transformation?
Yeah, I see that companies at present times are facing a very complex scenario in terms of workforce management, talent management, and that is because not only internal factors, but mostly for external factors such as like generation differences, the digital transformation impacts on business models. So I think that for many years, the people agenda was set to a secondary role in the organizational agenda. But right now, I see that organizations are finally coming to the point where they see that without the right talent in the organization, it doesn't matter how conceptually strong your strategy may be, you're not going to deliver. So that perception is the tipping point, I would say, for the HR function. Right now, without any questions, whenever you start a conversation from the people perspective, the feedback we see is that most of the companies are concerned in relation to their capacity of getting the right actions in attracting the right people, forming the right competencies, and boost high performance overall.
I love that you're saying that HR, it's time for them to be a part of the transformation and that it's critical for them to be involved in that within an organization. It's music to my ears because I've been saying the same thing for for 10 years, for over 10 years. Can you walk us through what design thinking in HR looks like, just kind of at a basic level?
Yes. And yes, it's funny because we the way we approach the HR challenges are pretty much grounded in design thinking. The design thinking, I won't say methodology, but I would say the design thinking framework. Our projects are pretty much set according to design thinking principles. But the way we use it, it's in the context of people analytics, actually. We classify people analytics in two different ways. In the first one, it's data analytics as a big data approach. So we use technology to support us in connecting different dots and establishing different correlations to start setting up the right scenario for the HR challenge in our clients. And the second one is what we call small data. And that's where design thinking comes into play, because the way we classify small data is pretty much a person-by-person approach. We use design thinking to get people on board to the challenge of solving the organization challenge of evolving its HR function. And so we invite people using design thinking principles to support the corporate, the organization in finding out the best set of approaches to address the challenge of evolving the whole HR management model. That's how design thinking and HR plays together. We use the design elements to welcome people, to make them feel, and based on empathy concepts, let them contribute for the good.
I love it. I love the small data piece, because I feel like in human resources, we have access to so much data, so much information. We get our employee survey data and it sort of anonymizes that, or we're just looking at the bigger picture and the trends that we're seeing. But what you're talking about is an individual empathetic approach where we're talking to groups of people and asking for their individual input in these different activities designed to really create a customized experience for in this case, the employee.
Yes, that's right. We want them to let us know what should be addressed, what companies should be looking at, and not because we got the broader context from data and analytics techniques, but also because we ask them what should be prioritized by organizations in this evolution journey. We try to get rid of premises and start thinking about the interventions based on data and actual feelings. We think that the combination of big data, small data, and in this case, will support companies to set up more intentional interventions and get better results as implementations comes into play as well.
So one more question about kind of the small data piece. How are you collecting this feedback, this input, and this information with the employees? Is there a mechanism or a approach that you're taking, or multiple approaches in doing this?
Yes, multiple approaches, but basically we collect through conversations. We go to what we call field expeditions. We go and start asking people how the experience of being part of that organization looks like. How do they feel about being part of that organization? And for the pain points that we can map from the conversations, we challenge each people to start thinking about how the right approach would look like, how the right intervention should look like, for them to perceive that the company is moving the right direction. So we go for interviews. We interview from executives to the staff, and after collecting their insights on what should be addressed and prioritized by that organization, we set up broader workshops, and then it's where we will bring back the design thinking tools and approaches to get the best from the audience we group in those workshops. We collect data from conversations and workshops.
I love it. And just to kind of recap here, because I feel like you've already given us so much information, that you really focused on the organizational purpose with the employee value proposition, and then through company leaders' roles within the organization, you kind of helped identify areas for improvement through big data as well as small data obtained through these different means that you mentioned earlier. Can you talk about, with the case study in mind, how does design thinking help organizations evolve from providers to what we call experienced designers?
Design thinking, the basic concept of the any design thinking approach is empathy, right? The ground zero element you should be focusing on how to foster empathy and how to be empathetic whenever going to expanding your understanding on the challenges the company has to be addressing to improve not only experience itself but also engagement levels and boost better results. Design thinking, what we rely on that approach to collect, the largest amount of insight from the people of that organization, and later to classify those insights in clusters that could be clusters that relates to the life cycle with the company. So we go for the insights and we cluster those insights from recruiting to development to career progressing to compensation things to learning, and then we with those insights clusterized, we go and challenge the executives in a way to just to challenge them to make sure that they are planning an intervention based on concrete evidence on what the challenges effectively are. So design thinking supports us in getting premises out of the table, and instead of it, bring to management concrete elements on what should be addressed by them during that challenge of evolving the operating model for the HR function. So design thinking pretty much works to get rid of the premises and get the real insights from the people before moving forward to the intervention plan.
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast sponsored by Clear Company. Today, I am talking about using design thinking to drive innovation and organizational transformation and culture with Oliver Kamakura.
Podcast support provided by Clear Company, a complete talent management platform designed to help small and medium-sized companies hire, retain, and engage A players. Visit clearcompany.com to sign up for a free personalized demo.
Talk us through some of those insights that came from those conversations with employees.
You know what? It's funny, Jessica. It's that we already delivered 3 different projects and for 3 of them the challenge was to find out the reason why the company had the reason why the return to all those investments the company has been dedicating to evolve the HR management model, things like engagement, things like high performance teams. So the 3 common elements for the projects were the question mark on why the results were not coming if all of them were heavily investing in getting the right technology in place, in getting the right environment in place, if they were supported by different HR players widely known by best practices and etc. what we did, the challenge is to start investigating the real, what we call root causes for this lack of positive results coming as a result for those different interventions. Challenge was really to find out what the company should be looking after along the challenge of getting a better business model or a better experience for their employees, how to be more intentional. So that goes from getting a better understanding of the organization context by deep and diving into data collected from different data sources and technology sources, and then combining that technology, those insights with insights coming from the people. I would say it's a challenge for the HR function to get a sponsorship from different states within the organization, because when we look backwards, in relation to Brazilian-based companies, we can see clearly that the HR was not really prepared, the HR function was not really prepared to report, to tangibilize, I would say, results. The lack of appropriate support in proposing transformation actions was something that the HR executives would be demanded to leave by without complaining. I would say that challenges to get to understand where the people are effectively complaining, where the intervention should be effectively directed before moving forward to any concrete action. Just to illustrate, I normally say that to my team. No one in this world likes to be treated just like a number or just like someone that has no preferences or desires, and instead of that being treated as a standard, right? So no one wants to receive like an intervention coming from their employer without the opportunity of getting to state their opinion on where the company should be dedicating their investments. If the really goal is to improve the overall experience with that organization, that would be, I would say, the primarily challenge, to get rid of that common mindset that a given and small group of people knows what should be done to improve the overall satisfaction of the whole population without going for a single question. The way we see design thinking coming into play is to support people in tangibilizing the real business challenge that needs to be addressed, and get the power of people to support management to classify and prioritize those questions, and consequently the actions to be tracked by them.
So you talked to the HR executive team, you shared with them the findings from your work. What kind of transformation took place? What kind of change? What did they take away from this? And then what implementations or changes did they make?
Good question. An interesting answer, I think. Whenever we share the insights coming from those interventions that we programmed along the project, and mostly coming from the workshops that we promoted with the large population of the client, it's amazing how exactly get impressive that over the fact that people are not asking for new technologies or for like perks or for like crazy things. They are asking companies for pretty basic adjustments on the way they relate to each other. So for example, in the project that we deliver in Brazil, focusing on enhancing the overall experience of the employees within, one of the most critical elements during the life cycle of the employees at that companies, and the three of them were exactly the same, was the onboarding. process, and not because the onboarding process were lacking from the right technology. The reason why they complained so much about the onboarding process was basically because they felt like they were doing that by themselves. Nobody was looking after them. So nobody was there in the first day with the company to support them in getting like the right information on basic things, like where should I get my computer from, or which database should I be assessing to get my work done. Surprise was then not because the number of insights to improve the overall onboarding experience. Surprise was because the most relevant portion of the intervention they were asking for was all analogical, was related to, relationship, the way to be treated, the way to be, care for the first days at that companies. So I would say that the surprise was that most of the interventions that the people were asking companies to perform, aiming at improving the overall experience with that company, was all related to, a small adjustment to the way we relate to each other, not to technology, not to, perks, and all of them would not demand the company to, commit a large amount of money to perform, to implement. On the contrary, it was they were all related to also behavior adjustment coming from management.
I love it. It's sometimes the simplest answer is also the one that's the most obvious.
Yes, exactly.
Empathy, you've talked a lot about during our time together, seems to be a key aspect of not just design thinking, but also the employee experience as part of the transformation journey. Can you talk a little bit about empathetic leadership and how that relates to larger organizational change?
Yep. The way we see is that empathetic leadership facilitates the onboarding of the people for the change. And that is because in most of the cases, leadership function in a way that, I think the leadership thinks they are a sort of, oracle to all uncertainties of the world, of the collective, uncertainty coming from, this complex new business scenario that is impacting the way we do like people management in general. So without empathy, it's hard for people to feel welcome, collaborate, and to contribute for the good. Because they will always think about like, well, if I sometimes feel like insecure on what to do because like my job is changing, the role I used to perform is changing, the demands are changing. But if I come to raise my hand and ask for help, I may be, construed as a low performer in a traditional management model, I would say. So being empathetic means that leadership needs to be aware that this complex scenario is complex to everyone, including to themselves, right? So if they do not let people perceive that they are also need to be supported, if they do not, show up to their people vulnerable, possibly people are not going to be also sharing the same set of feelings that need to be mapped for companies to address, change the right way. It's not a matter of, getting the right technology or only working under, getting things done under the historically successful methodologies. It is about for you to get the right visibility on how your people feel in relation to this transformation and times, and then intentionally getting the right interventions programmed to make people feel more comfortable in relation to the role they need to play in this transformation journey, and also getting leadership to play the right role for people. And this has pretty much been empathetic in relation to their fears and conscious in relation to the intervention they need to receive in order to feel safe and comfortable to perform at their best. Doesn't matter the complex scenario they need to address.
Well, Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Where can people go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I've been posting not full details on privileges, but everything I get from schools and influencers and people coming from writers and HR experts, useful for this transformation challenge that companies are facing at present times. I share. So LinkedIn, and also at EY's website, you can find me as well at under People Advisory Services.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to your LinkedIn profile, and then we'll grab that link under the EY services so they can connect with you directly. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica, for your time as well, and thank you for the opportunity of speaking to the other audience.
We often talk about putting the human back in human resources, and design thinking is a natural progression for doing just that. Oliver presented a case study on transformational change that worked with a global organization, and I really think that HR leaders can learn from the application of these ideas to help push innovation and cultural programs with their own organizations forward. It's a great example of how design thinking can be applied. And honestly, you're probably already doing some of these things. You're not necessarily thinking about them in the design framework kind of way. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast sponsored by Clear Company. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. This is Jessica Miller Merrill. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our previous podcast episodes.